All right, thanks for being here today. This is an original story from Hidden Revenge Family, and it took a turn you truly didn't see coming. Let's get into it.
I stood on the front porch of my childhood home in Richmond, Virginia, with a duffel bag on my shoulder and a discharge folder in my hand. 5 years in military intelligence had taught me how to read hostile territory. I didn't expect the first battlefield of civilian life to be my own front door. I rang the bell. It took a full 30 seconds before it opened. Not because no one was home, because Brooke liked entrances. She opened the door with a smile stretched tight across expensive teeth, wearing a silk dress that probably cost more than my monthly base pay ever did. "Well, look who finally came back," she said, still walking like you've got a rifle up your spine. She leaned in for a hug that didn't quite land. Her perfume hit me first. Sweet, heavy designer, the kind of scent that announces itself before the person does. I stepped inside. The living room was full of women in pastel dresses sitting on antique chairs, balancing porcelain teacups like they'd trained for it. A string quartet playlist floated through a speaker hidden somewhere. A silver tray of pastries sat on the coffee table. The house smelled like sugar and money. Brooke clapped her hands lightly. "Ladies, this is my sister Margot. She just got back from, where was it again? Some base in the desert?" "Iraq," I said. "Oh, right. Well, we're so proud of you." She turned to the group. "Margot, could you grab more ice from the kitchen and maybe take some coats to the bedroom?" A few women looked at me with polite curiosity. One whispered, "Thank you for your service," in the same tone people use when they compliment someone's haircut they don't like. I stared at Brooke. She tilted her head. "What we're hosting," so I walked past them because sometimes the fastest way to confirm an insult is to let it finish landing. In the kitchen, I opened the freezer. It was packed with gourmet frozen meals. Not the kind you microwave, the kind you heat in an oven that costs more than a used car. I filled a crystal bowl with ice. As I carried it back, I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. Short hair, straight posture, plain black jeans, boots still dusty from the base. I looked like someone who had just walked into a costume party without the memo. Back in the living room, I set the bowl down. Brooke didn't even look at me when she said, "Thank you, soldier girl." Something in my chest tightened, but I kept my face neutral. Emotional control is a skill set. You don't lose it just because you're home. One of Brooke's friends, a woman with lips that had never met a natural state, asked, "So Margot, do you plan to stay long? Or are you?" Between missions, Brooke laughed. "Oh, she doesn't plan. She follows orders." More laughter. I let it pass. There was no tactical advantage in reacting yet. Then Brooke lifted her hand to adjust her hair. That's when I saw it, her ring finger. No family ring. No diamond with the tiny fracture on the left side. No gold band worn thin by decades. No ring that had been on my mother's hand in every childhood memory I had. In its place sat a massive fashion ring, oversized, loud, shiny. The kind of ring that screams for attention because it has no story behind it. I walked closer. Brooke saw my eyes lock on it and smirked, enjoying the slow reveal like a magician who knew the trick worked. Looking at my new ring, she asked, "Cute, right?" "Where's Mom's ring?" I said. The room quieted a notch. Not silent, just slightly off balance. Brooke waved her hand casually. "Oh, that old thing, I got rid of it." I blinked once. "You what?" She rolled her eyes like I'd asked why the sky was blue. "It was outdated, Margot. It didn't match anything. I traded it for something more appropriate for my lifestyle." I looked at her, then at the women around her. No one looked surprised. A few nodded like this was normal behavior among adults who collect expensive mistakes. "That ring was passed down from Grandma," I said. "Mom never took it off. She wore it through chemo, through Dad's bankruptcy, through everything." Brooke leaned closer, lowering her voice just enough to feel intimate and cruel. "And now Mom is gone, so I upgraded." She stepped back and raised her voice again. "Tea, anyone?" Conversation restarted. The quartet playlist kept playing. Pastries were eaten. Laughter returned like someone flipped a switch. I stood there still while the world kept moving around me. Have you ever walked into a room where everyone thinks you're the help, even though you're the only one who's actually survived something real? I moved to the side of the room and watched Brooke perform. She touched people's arms when she talked. She tilted her head just right when she listened. She had perfected the art of looking like she cared without actually carrying weight. I didn't know yet how she'd done it. I didn't know when she'd done it. I didn't know what else she'd sold or signed or borrowed. But I knew one thing with absolute clarity. My mother's ring was gone, and Brooke was wearing a replacement like a trophy. I stepped toward the hallway again, my eyes scanning doors, drawers, corners, old habits, recon, observe, map the environment. Brooke noticed and called out sweetly, "Margot, sweetheart, could you bring more napkins? And maybe take the trash out later. These heels are killing me." I turned back. She smiled, the kind of smile that says, "You don't belong here, not in this world, not in this house, not in my life." I returned the smile, because if she thought I had crossed oceans and deserts just to be her maid, she had badly misjudged what she'd invited back into her home. I held that smile and started counting exits, cameras, doors, and blind spots, because once you realize you're in hostile territory, you don't argue, you assess. Brooke went back to pouring tea like she'd just commented on the weather. I stepped into the hallway again this time, without pretending I was running errands. My boots were quiet on the hardwood floor. I'd learned how to move without announcing myself long before I learned how to pour tea into fragile cups. The house looked the same as when I left 5 years ago, but now it felt staged, like a showroom pretending to be a home. Family photos were still on the wall, but newer frames had replaced older ones. In most of them, Brooke stood center stage. Dad stood slightly behind her. Mom, in the last photo before she got sick, still wore the ring. I kept moving. I wasn't angry yet. Anger is loud. I was in a colder place. The one where you collect facts before you make decisions. The study door was half closed. I pushed it open. Tyler's desk sat exactly where Dad's old desk used to be. Same spot by the window, different wood, darker, shinier, trying too hard. On the desk sat a laptop, a stack of mail, and a red folder. Not a cute red, not decorative. The ugly practical red of official paperwork. I didn't touch anything yet. I just stood there reading what I could from where I was. Past due, final notice, delinquent account. I walked closer. The name on the documents was Tyler Brooks. The address was this house. The amount made my brain pause for half a second. $1,237,418.26. I let out a slow breath through my nose. So that's what the tea parties were built on. I opened the folder, mortgage statements, late fees, notices from the bank, a final warning letter, a timeline of someone sprinting toward a cliff while smiling for Instagram. I wasn't supposed to be in this room. I wasn't supposed to see this. But once you see a battlefield map, you don't pretend you didn't. A floorboard creaked behind me. I turned. Tyler stood in the doorway with a forced smile that never reached his eyes. "Hey, Margot." "Looking for the bathroom?" he asked. I closed the folder calmly and set it back exactly where it was. "No, just getting familiar with the house again." His jaw tightened. "Not much. Just enough for someone trained to read micro-expressions." "Right," he said. "Brooke didn't mention you'd be exploring?" "I like knowing where I am," I said. He laughed once. "Too sharp. You always did." We stared at each other for a second. Then he stepped aside to let me pass, but not without letting me feel that I was being watched. I walked back into the living room carrying nothing, accomplishing nothing, yet knowing far more than anyone expected. Brooke caught my eye from across the room and raised her cup in a fake toast. I raised my empty hand back. Inside my head, a checklist was forming. Find out where the ring went. Find out when it was sold. Find out how deep this debt goes. Find out what Brooke signed. Find out what Dad knows. Not emotions. Objectives. The tea party ended an hour later. Guests left with light kisses on the cheek and promises to do lunch soon. Brooke walked them to the door like a queen dismissing courtiers. When the last car pulled away, Brooke exhaled loudly and kicked off her heels. "God, that was exhausting," she said. "People expect so much." She turned to me. "Margot, could you help clear the table?" I looked at her. I could have refused, but sometimes you let your target think they're in control while you build your advantage. So I picked up plates and carried them to the kitchen. That night, I slept in my old bedroom. The same twin bed, the same blue curtains, the same ceiling stain Dad never fixed. Except now there was a fancy chandelier in the hallway that didn't match the rest of the house. At 2 a.m., when the house was quiet, I pulled out my phone. I didn't call friends from high school. I didn't call family. I called people who knew how to find things. A former unit contact. A financial analyst I once helped during a joint operation. A private investigator who owed me a favor. A jeweler database contact I'd kept on file after a case overseas. Short messages, no details, Just requests. Need a trace on a sold diamond ring. Family piece. Virginia. Need background on a mortgage under Tyler Brooks Richmond. Need any public filings tied to Brooke Brooks in last 3 years. I sent each one and put the phone face down. Silence again. In the morning, Brooke acted like nothing had happened. She made green smoothies and talked about a charity gala. Tyler scrolled on his phone and didn't meet my eyes. Dad wasn't at breakfast. Brooke said he was resting. I asked where. She waved her hand vaguely. Upstairs. He's not feeling well these days. I went upstairs anyway. Dad was in the back bedroom, sitting in a chair by the window. He looked smaller than I remembered. Not sick, just tired, like someone who had been carrying something heavy for too long. He smiled when he saw me, a real one, not stretched, not polished. Hey kiddo, he said, didn't expect you back so soon. I hugged him. For the first time since arriving, I let myself feel something warm. We talked about small things, the garden, the neighbor's new dog, the weather. I didn't ask about the ring, not yet. I didn't ask about the mortgage, not yet. I didn't want his answers before I had the full picture, because half-truths hurt more when you care about the person telling them. By afternoon, my phone started lighting up. The private investigator ring sold 6 months ago. Local jeweler, cash transaction, seller Brooke Brooks. The financial analyst mortgage delinquent. In default. Bank preparing asset recovery. High-risk loan. The jeweler contact ring, match description, sold under market value. Buyer resold overseas 2 weeks later. I sat on the back porch reading each message twice. The ring was gone. Not misplaced. Not lost. Sold. And the house was a ticking financial bomb wrapped in marble countertops and social smiles. Inside the living room, Brooke laughed on a video call talking about spa days and brunch plans. Tyler opened another envelope from the mail pile and frowned. I watched them through the glass door. They thought I was background noise, an extra body in the house, a temporary guest who would eventually leave again. They had no idea that the moment Brooke lifted her hand and showed me a new ring, she had triggered a process that didn't stop just because she poured tea afterward. I opened my notes app and started listing everything I needed next. Names, dates, contracts, signatures, bank contacts. Not revenge yet, just preparation. I stared at the list on my phone, then locked the screen and slipped it into my pocket, because planning on paper was one thing, but confirmation in person was where lies usually died. I drove to the other side of Richmond to a small jewelry shop wedged between a barber and a closed-down bakery. The sign above the door had faded gold letters. I'd been here once as a teenager, standing next to Mom while she got the ring cleaned. I still remembered the bell sound when the door opened. It made the same sound now. Behind the counter stood Gus. Older, thinner, same thick glasses, same careful hands. He looked up and smiled, then froze when he recognized me. Margot, he said softly, you look just like your mother did at your age. I nodded. I'm here about her ring. His smile faded without drama. Just acceptance, like he'd known this day would come. He gestured to a chair. I sat. No small talk, I said. Did my sister sell it here? Gus didn't pretend. No denial. No politeness. Yes. I exhaled once, not a sigh, just air leaving lungs that had been braced. When 6 months ago. How much? He hesitated. Tell me. He gave the number. It was about 1/10 of what the ring was worth. Exactly what the messages had said. Was she in a hurry? I asked. She didn't ask questions, didn't negotiate, just wanted cash, same day. Did she say why she said it was for family expenses? We both knew that was a lie wearing good manners. Where is it now? I asked. Gus shook his head. I sold it to a dealer in New York. He exported it. I can try to trace it, but these stones move fast. I want you to try. He nodded. I already started after I saw your name on the news. Your discharge ceremony was on TV. I figured you'd come eventually. That earned a small, humorless smile from me. Thank you, I said. He reached under the counter and pulled out a small velvet pouch. I kept something, he said. Inside was the original ring box, worn, scratched, a tiny crack in the hinge. I couldn't keep the ring, he said, but I kept this. I closed my hand around the box. It fit in my palm like a memory that refused to leave. I stood. If you hear anything, call me. He nodded. Your mother would be proud of you. I didn't answer that. Pride wasn't the mission. Clarity was. Outside the sun was bright. too cheerful for what I now knew. I sat in my car and opened the velvet box again, empty, a space where something precious had lived. Then I put it away and drove back to the house. The driveway was full, a delivery truck, a florist van, a man carrying folding chairs inside. Brooke was standing at the door giving directions like a general in heels. Another event, another performance, another layer of illusion built on a rotting foundation. I walked past them and went straight to the study. This time, I didn't just look at the red folder. I pulled every drawer open. Top drawer pens, paper clips, business cards. Second drawer checkbooks, car documents, insurance forms. Third drawer a manila envelope labeled in Brooke's handwriting. Family documents. I opened it. Inside were copies of my parents' IDs, utility bills, tax forms, and a power of attorney agreement. My father's name signed at the bottom, my mother's name beside it. Brooke listed as authorized agent. I read the date. 8 months ago, 2 months before Mom died. I read the clause that made my stomach tighten just a fraction. Authorization to manage financial assets. Authorization to enter loan agreements. Authorization to pledge property as collateral. I flipped to the next page. A mortgage contract. Property address this house. Loan amount $1.2 million. Signed by Brooke Brooks as agent. Approved by a bank officer. Dated 7 months ago. I sat down in Tyler's chair. So that was the sequence. Power of attorney, mortgage, ring sale, tea parties, not care, not grief, logistics. The door opened. Brooke walked in still wearing a smile from the outside performance. It dropped the moment she saw the papers in my hand. Put that down, she said. Did Mom know? I asked. Brooke stepped closer. She was sick. She trusted me. Did Dad know? He didn't ask questions. Someone had to handle things. I held up the mortgage document. You put the house up as collateral. It's our house, she snapped. It was Mom and Dad's house. Brooke's voice lowered, controlled, sharp. You think your little service career makes you better than me? You were gone. I stayed. I handled everything. I made sure we didn't fall apart. You sold her ring. Brooke's face twitched. Just once. That ring was sitting in a drawer doing nothing, she said. I turned it into survival. Then why the new ring? I asked, pointing at her hand. She glanced at it instinctively, then back at me. Because I deserve nice things, she said. I let the silence sit between us. No yelling, no theatrics, just two people facing the truth without filters. Tyler appeared in the doorway. What's going on? He asked. Brooke straightened her shoulders. Margot was snooping, she said. Like always. I stood up and placed the documents neatly back into the envelope. I'm leaving the papers exactly where they were, I said. But I've seen them, and now I know everything. Tyler's eyes darted to Brooke. Not surprised. Afraid. Brooke leaned against the desk, crossing her arms. And what are you going to do? She asked. March into court with your army boots. Sue your own family. Good luck with that, soldier girl. I looked at her. Not angry, not shaken, just aware. I'm not going to court, I said. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. Court takes time, I continued. And time is the only thing you don't have. I walked out of the study, down the hallway, past the living room where chairs were being arranged for another fake perfect event, past the kitchen where staff unpacked catering trays, out the back door to the porch. I sat on the steps and opened my phone. One new message from the financial analyst. Bank preparing to sell delinquent mortgage to recovery fund. Opportunity window soon. I typed. Send me details. Then I slipped the phone back into my pocket, closed the velvet ring box in my hand, and stared at the yard where Mom used to grow roses. Everything Brooke had built was standing on paperwork, debt, and silence. And silence, once broken, never goes back together. I stayed on that porch until the sun slid lower, then stood up because thinking time was over and action time had started. I drove to a quiet office park on the edge of the city, the kind with clean windows and no personality. My investment firm occupied one small suite on the second floor. No flashy sign, no receptionist in heels. Just a desk, a locked filing cabinet, and a business that existed for exactly this kind of moment. I unlocked the door, stepped inside, and turned on the lights. On the wall hung one framed certificate, Margot Hale, Managing Partner. It always felt strange seeing my name in a civilian font instead of military stencil. But this was the other life I built quietly during service, the one nobody in my family knew existed. I sat at the desk and opened my laptop. First call the financial analyst. He answered immediately. You saw the message. Yes, I said. I want the mortgage. There was a pause. Not doubt, respect. That's a 7-figure acquisition, he said. You understand the risk. I understand the opportunity, I said. Send me the bank contact. Tonight. Done, he replied. Second call, Arthur Vance. He picked up on the second ring. His voice was gravel and coffee. Margot Hale, he said. I heard you're back on American soil. I need a lawyer, I said. A fast one. He chuckled once. You always were straight to the point. What's the target, my sister? I said. She leveraged my parents' house for a $1.2 million mortgage. It's in default. I want to buy the debt. Arthur was quiet for a moment. You're sure you want to walk this road, he asked. Family cases are messier than war zones. I didn't start this, I said. But I'm going to finish it. Good, he replied. Because I don't do hesitation. Send me the documents you found. I'll draft a structure for acquisition through your firm. We'll make this clean. I want speed, I said. You'll get precision, he said. Speed comes after. I emailed him scans of the mortgage contract, the power of attorney, and the bank notices. Within minutes, he replied with confirmation. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling. No anger, no sadness, just the steady hum of a plan forming. At midnight, my inbox chimed. The bank contact. A recovery department officer named Linda Perez. Phone number included. I called. She sounded tired in a professional way. Ms. Hale, I understand you represent an investment firm interested in acquiring a delinquent mortgage portfolio, she asked. Yes, I said. Specifically the Tyler Brooks account, Richmond Property, she typed. That account is scheduled for sale to a recovery fund within days, she said. Are you prepared to make a competitive offer? I'm prepared to close quickly, I said. Another pause. This one had interest. Send proof of funds, she said. And I'll open negotiation. I uploaded the financial statements of my firm, years of quiet consulting contracts, intelligence analysis for private clients, security advisory retainers, nothing flashy, just steady income. Enough to make this purchase without blinking. By morning, I had an email from Arthur. I've prepared the acquisition vehicle, he wrote. You'll purchase through Hale Strategic Holdings. Liability shielded. Clean chain of ownership. Once the debt is yours, you control the asset. I replied with one word. Proceed. I didn't sleep. I didn't need to. Momentum was fuel. By noon, Linda called again. The bank accepts your offer, she said. We'll transfer the mortgage rights upon wire confirmation. I opened my banking dashboard and authorized the transfer. 7 digits moved across a screen. No champagne, no dramatic music, just a click and a confirmation number. Linda sent a final document. Congratulations, she said. Hale Strategic Holdings is now the creditor of record on the Brooks mortgage. I thanked her and ended the call. Then I called Arthur. It's done, I said. He laughed softly. You just bought your sister's house without stepping into a courtroom. I'd say welcome home, but this is more like welcome to war. I need the next steps, I said. Default status remains, he replied. No renegotiation required. You now have the legal right to enforce collection or initiate asset recovery. We'll file the ownership change with the county tonight. How long until enforcement, I asked. Arthur checked something. Given the existing delinquency timeline, enforcement can begin immediately. No grace period needed. No appeal likely to succeed. I pictured Brooks' teacups, her smile, her new ring. Prepare eviction documentation, I said. Arthur whistled once, low. You don't hesitate, he said. Just like the old days, paper targets are easier than live ones, I said. He laughed. I'll have the notice ready by morning. I ended the call and sat in silence. No satisfaction yet. No triumph. Just the weight of inevitability. In the evening, I drove back to the house. Another event was happening. Brooke loved a calendar filled with distractions, balloons in the entryway, a banner across the living room, happy anniversary. Tyler stood greeting guests. Brooke floated through the room in a designer dress ring flashing under warm lights. Every laugh sounded rehearsed. Every hug looked practiced. I entered quietly. Nobody announced me. Nobody needed to. I was background again. A shadow in boots among people in polished shoes. Brooke spotted me and walked over, eyes sparkling with false warmth. There you are, she said. Try not to scare anyone with your serious face tonight. I looked at her hand, the ring, the replacement. Then I looked at her house. Not her house anymore. Not really. I reached into my pocket and touched my phone. Arthur had sent the final message. Ownership filed. You are creditor of record. Eviction documents in progress. I slid the phone back into my pocket. Brooke tilted her head. What are you smiling about? She asked. I smiled wider. Just enjoying the party, I said. And for the first time that night, the smile was real. I stepped fully into the living room, letting the noise and perfume and forced laughter wash over me like static, because sometimes the best place to hide is in plain sight. Brooke had turned the house into a wedding anniversary spectacle. White tablecloths, gold-rimmed glasses, a catered bar, a hired photographer floating through the crowd like a polite predator, capturing every fake perfect moment. Tyler stood beside Brooke near a small raised platform at the far end of the room. A microphone waited there, innocent and dangerous. I took a glass of water from a passing server. No alcohol. I wanted my mind clear. I found a spot near the wall half shadowed by a tall plant and watched. Brooke was in her element. She laughed too loudly. She touched shoulders. She tilted her head and narrowed her eyes in sympathy when someone spoke. She knew exactly how to look like the warmest person in the room while keeping everyone at a safe emotional distance. The ring on her finger flashed under every chandelier. That ring, sitting where my mother's ring used to be. A woman in a navy dress approached me, smiling politely. You must be Margot, she said. Brooke told us you're in the military. That must be interesting, was I said. I'm out now. Oh, she replied, blinking. Well, welcome back to normal life. I almost laughed. Normal. She drifted away toward the bar. Another guest, a man in an expensive watch and a grin that tried too hard, leaned closer. So, Margot, he said, you ever miss all the action? Not as much as people miss paying their bills, I said. He blinked, unsure whether to laugh. I walked away before he decided. Near the kitchen entrance, I spotted Dad. He stood alone holding a soda, watching the room without participating. His eyes met mine. I walked over and hugged him. You okay? I asked. He nodded, but his voice was tired. Your sister likes parties. That's one word for it, I said. He smiled faintly, but his eyes drifted past me toward Brooke. Not proud, worried. I squeezed his shoulder and moved back into the crowd. The music shifted. Tyler tapped the microphone. A feedback squeal cut through the room. Conversations faded. Ladies and gentlemen, Tyler said, raising his glass. Thank you for coming to celebrate our anniversary. Applause. Brooke stepped forward, taking the microphone from him like she'd been waiting her whole life. Thank you all, she said. Tyler and I have built something beautiful together. A home, a life, a future. More applause. She scanned the crowd, then locked eyes with me. And of course, she continued, voice smooth as polished glass. I want to thank my little sister Margot for being here tonight. She's just returned from her unique career. A ripple of polite laughter. Brooke tilted her head. It's inspiring, really. Some people defend the country, some of us defend the family's social standing. We all serve in our own ways. Laughter grew louder. I sipped my water. Brooke's eyes gleamed. She was enjoying this. Margot never really understood money, she went on, or style, or how the real world works. But we love her anyway, even if she still thinks boots and discipline solve everything. Another wave of laughter. Someone near me whispered, "Oh wow," under their breath. Brooke raised her glass. So here's to family, even the ones who don't quite fit the mold. We make room for them anyway. Applause. I looked around, faces smiling, glasses raised. People enjoying a show they thought was harmless. Brooke handed the microphone back to Tyler and stepped down satisfied. She moved through the crowd again, basking in the afterglow of attention like a performer leaving the stage. She stopped in front of me. Well, she asked quietly. Did you enjoy that? I met her eyes. It was informative, I said. She frowned slightly. You always talk like a robot. I like facts, I replied. She lifted her hand, the ring glinting inches from my face. And the fact is, she said softly, this house is mine. This life is mine. You're a guest here. Remember that. I nodded slowly, noted. She smirked and walked away, heels clicking against the floor, confident in her victory. I watched her weave through guests accepting compliments, kisses on cheeks, little conspiratorial laughs. Tyler followed behind her, always half a step back, like an understudy who never got the lead role. I drifted toward the hallway, letting the crowd cover my movement. In the study, I closed the door and locked it. I pulled out my phone. Arthur had sent a document. Eviction notice, prepared for service. I opened it, my name at the top. Hale Strategic Holdings, creditor of record, property address, legal language clean and sharp. Another message followed. Local enforcement coordinated, security team ready, whenever you say. I read it twice, then locked the screen. In the mirror above Tyler's desk, I saw my reflection. Not the soldier, not the guest, not the forgotten sister. Something else. I slipped the phone back into my pocket and unlocked the door. When I returned to the living room, Brooke was telling a story to a group of women, mimicking someone's accent for laughs. She noticed me and waved mockingly as if greeting a fan. I walked toward her unhurried. She leaned in to whisper, "If you need money, Margot, just say so. I'd hate for my sister to end up sleeping on base couches." I leaned in close enough that only she could hear me. "I don't need your money," I said. "I already have your debt." Her smile froze for a fraction of a second. "What?" she asked. I stepped back, letting her wonder whether she misheard. Then I turned toward the bar, blending back into the crowd, leaving her with a question that refused to sit quietly in her mind. I walked away from her whisper, feeling her eyes burning into my back, and I didn't rush because urgency is a gift you never give your opponent. Behind me, Brooke laughed a little too loudly at something Tyler said. It was the kind of laugh people use to prove they're not nervous. I took my time reaching the edge of the crowd, picked up another glass of water, and turned back toward the center of the room. The party kept moving, music, glasses clinking, a photographer snapping pictures of happiness for later editing. Brooke stepped onto the small platform again, this time, without a microphone. She was just talking to a cluster of guests, showing off her ring with casual wrist movements. She noticed me approaching and tilted her head, amused. "Changed your mind?" she asked, ready to finally join the real world. I stepped closer until I stood just below the platform. People around us quieted slightly, sensing tension without knowing why. Americans love a scene as long as it doesn't involve them. I looked up at her. "Where is Mom's ring?" I asked. The question cut through the room more cleanly than any microphone. Brooke blinked. "We already talked about that." "No," I said. "We didn't. So I'll ask again. Where is Mom's ring?" A few guests shifted. Tyler stepped closer to Brooke, sensing danger, but not understanding it. Brooke sighed, performing patience. "I told you, I lost it during a charity trip. It's tragic. I've moved on. You should too." Her voice was sweet enough to rot teeth. I nodded once. "Okay," I said. "Let's hear that version again." I pulled my phone from my pocket. Brooke's eyes narrowed. "What are you doing?" Instead of answering, I tapped the screen and raised the volume. A recorded voice filled the living room. Brooke's voice, clear, close, private. That old woman never understood money. The ring was just sitting there doing nothing. I needed quick cash. "It's a piece of jewelry, not a sacred relic," a jeweler's voice responded. "I can offer 40,000 today." Brooke again. "Fine, just don't ask questions. I don't want my sister finding out." "She's dramatic." Silence followed, thick and immediate. Someone near the back whispered, "Oh my God." The recording continued. "My parents signed the papers. They didn't read anything. That house is collateral now, but it's temporary. Once Tyler's business takes off, we'll be fine." I stopped the playback. The music from the speakers kept going because nobody had thought to turn it off yet. A pop song about love and loyalty. The timing was cruel and perfect. Brooke stared at me, not shocked, exposed. "That's illegal," she said quietly. "So is fraud," I said. Tyler stepped forward, his face pale. "Margot," he said. Forcing a smile, "Let's not do this here." "Then where would you prefer?" I asked. "Another tea party." Brooke stepped down from the platform slowly. Her voice dropped. "You recorded me without consent." "I documented a crime," I said. People around us were no longer pretending to socialize. They were watching. Phones came out. Someone started filming. Brooke noticed and hissed. "Turn that off," but nobody listened. Brooke took a breath, regrouping. She was good at pivoting. "You're bitter," she announced to the room. "You left home and came back angry that I built something you never could." A few people nodded uncertainly, clinging to comfort. I raised my voice just enough. "She sold our mother's ring. She put this house up as collateral using power of attorney signed while Mom was sick. She lied to Dad. She lied to all of you." Dad's name shifted the room. People glanced toward the hallway. Dad stood there now, having heard enough to walk in. He didn't speak. He just watched his daughters. Brooke's confidence cracked for the first time. "You don't know everything," she snapped at me. I know enough, I said. Tyler grabbed my arm. You need to leave, he said. I looked down at his hand. Take it off, I said. He didn't. So I removed it myself. Not violently, just firmly. Military training makes certain movements instinctive. His hand fell away. He stepped back, startled. A few gasps fluttered around the room. I pulled a folded document from my bag. Before anyone decides to physically escort me out, I said, you might want to know who owns the debt on this property. Brooke's eyes locked onto the paper. Tyler swallowed. I unfolded it and held it up. Effective today, I said. Hale Strategic Holdings is the creditor of record for this mortgage. That means the bank no longer owns your debt. I do. The room was so quiet I could hear the refrigerator hum in the kitchen. Brooke forced a laugh. You're bluffing, she said. You can't just buy a mortgage overnight. I can, I said. And I did. I handed the document to Tyler. He scanned it quickly. His hands shook. Brooke grabbed it from him and read it herself. Her lips moved silently over the words. When she reached the signature line, she looked up. You planned this, she whispered. I responded to what you started, I said. Brooke looked around the room. All her guests, her curated audience, her social armor, every face was watching her fall out of character. She changed tactics again. Dad, she called out, voice soft and pleading. Tell her to stop. This is family. Dad stepped forward. He looked at me, then at Brooke. You sold your mother's ring, he said. Not a question, a verdict. Brooke opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. I did what I had to, she said. Dad's shoulders sank like something heavy finally dropped onto them. I trusted you, he said. That landed harder than any accusation. Brooke turned back to me, panic breaking through anger. You're not actually going to do anything, she said. This is a stunt. You wouldn't destroy your own sister. I slipped the document back into my bag. I don't have to destroy you, I said. Your choices did that already. I turned away from her toward the front door. Behind me, Brooke's voice rose sharp and cracking. You don't belong here. This is my house. I paused at the door and looked back once. Not anymore, I said. Then I stepped outside into the night air, leaving the noise of the party behind me, already dialing a number I knew by memory. The night air hit my face as the call connected, and I spoke before the first ring finished. It's time, I said. Arthur's voice came through calm and awake. I'm already in my car. 10 minutes. I ended the call and stood on the front lawn. Behind me, muffled through the walls, Brooke's voice climbed higher, Tyler trying to quiet her guests, pretending they hadn't just witnessed a social earthquake. I didn't go far. I just waited. Headlights swept across the driveway. A black sedan rolled in and parked cleanly. Arthur stepped out, gray hair, tailored suit, no wasted movement. 2 men in dark jackets stepped out of another car behind him. Security, professional, quiet. Arthur walked up beside me. You look relaxed, he said. I slept well last night, I replied. He handed me a slim folder. Ownership confirmation. Enforcement authorization. All filed. All legal. I opened the folder, checked the first page, then closed it. Let's go back inside, I said. Arthur smiled. After you. We walked to the front door together. No rush, no drama, just inevitability. I opened the door. The party had mutated. Guests clustered in confused knots. Some were leaving, some were pretending to check messages. Brooke stood near the platform, gripping the edge like it was the last stable thing in her life. Tyler hovered beside her, whispering in her ear. Dad stood by the hallway, still and quiet. Every head turned toward us. Arthur stepped in beside me, his presence instantly changing the atmosphere. People recognized power even if they didn't know its name. Brooke straightened. Oh, great, she said. You brought backup. Arthur nodded politely. Ms. Brooks, he said. Arthur Vance, legal counsel for Hale Strategic Holdings. Brooke's eyes flicked between us. I don't need a lawyer's name, she snapped. I need her to stop. Arthur didn't react. Lawyers who've seen real conflict don't waste energy on tone. I'm here to inform you, he said, that Hale Strategic Holdings is now the creditor of record for this property. Your mortgage is in default. All notices of delinquency were issued prior to acquisition. Therefore, enforcement procedures are now active. Tyler's voice cracked. You can't just walk in here and take our house. Arthur tilted his head slightly. Not your house, he corrected. Collateral property tied to an unpaid loan. Ownership of debt conveys control of recovery. A guest near the bar muttered, Is this real? Someone else whispered, I think it is. Brooke stepped forward, forcing steel into her spine. This is intimidation, she said. I'll call my lawyer. Arthur nodded. Please do, he will confirm everything I'm saying. She turned to me. You're doing this in front of everyone, she hissed. You're humiliating me. I met her eyes. You did that yourself when you decided nothing applied to you. Arthur opened his folder and pulled out a document. Ms. Brooks, he said, this is formal notice that all requests for extension or renegotiation of your mortgage are denied. Effective immediately, asset recovery procedures proceed. He handed the paper to Brooke. She didn't take it. So I did and placed it against her chest lightly. She grabbed it with shaking hands. Tyler read over her shoulder, his breathing sped up. We can pay, Tyler said. We just need time. Arthur shook his head once. Default has already been established. Sale of debt has been completed. Time expired before today. Brooke's voice cracked. You planned this. You waited for the right moment. I shrugged slightly. I waited for the truth, I said. You provided everything else. Dad stepped forward then. Brooke, he said quietly. Is any of this untrue? Brooke looked at him. Really looked at him, then looked away. That ring was just a thing, she said. The house is just a structure. I was trying to build a life. Dad's eyes glistened, but he didn't raise his voice. You built it on lies, he said, on your mother's memory. The room was so silent even Brooke didn't have a comeback. Arthur checked his watch. Next step, he said. Service of eviction notice. Law enforcement is already scheduled to attend. Brooke's head snapped up. Eviction, she repeated. You're throwing me out of my own house. I stepped closer. Not your house, I said. Not anymore. Her face changed. Not anger now. Fear, you wouldn't, she whispered. I'm your sister. I didn't answer immediately, not for effect. Because sometimes you speak only when there's nothing left to explain. I'm the creditor, I said, and you're in default. Tyler grabbed Brooke's hand. We'll appeal, he said. We'll fix this. Arthur gave him a sympathetic look that held no mercy. You can attempt appeal, he said, but enforcement begins tonight. Brooke turned toward the crowd, desperate for allies. Are you all just going to watch this? She cried. This is insane. A woman who had sipped tea hours earlier now avoided eye contact. Another guest murmured, I should get my coat. Someone else quietly slipped out the front door. Social loyalty evaporates faster than debt forgiveness. Brooke looked back at me. This is about the ring, she said. You're insane over a piece of jewelry. I leaned in slightly. It's about what you were willing to sell, I said, and who you were willing to sacrifice. Arthur cleared his throat. Ms. Hale, he said to me, security and officer will arrive momentarily. I nodded. Brooke's breathing became shallow. Tyler's voice dropped. What do we do? Brooke didn't answer. She was staring at me now, really seeing me for the first time since I walked through that front door days ago. Not the soldier, not the helper, not the forgotten sister, the owner of the debt beneath her feet. Outside, distant tires rolled onto the driveway. Doors closed. Footsteps approached. Brooke's eyes widened as the sound came closer. Unstoppable, mechanical, final. I stepped aside and opened the door again. 2 uniformed officers entered, followed by one of Arthur's security men carrying a slim envelope. Arthur gestured toward Brooke and Tyler. Service of eviction notice, he said. The security man stepped forward, envelope ready, while Brooke stood frozen in the center of the living room that no longer belonged to her. The envelope touched Brooke's hand, and she didn't take it, so the officer gently pressed it against her palm until her fingers closed around it, because procedure doesn't care about pride. This is a formal eviction notice, the officer said. You are required to vacate the property within 30 minutes. You may take personal clothing and essential items only. Any resistance will be documented. Brooke stared at the envelope like it had bitten her. Tyler stepped in front of her. This is outrageous, he said. This is a misunderstanding. Arthur raised one finger slightly. It is neither, he said. This is enforcement of a defaulted mortgage. Everything here is standard practice. One of the guests whispered, 30 minutes. Another answered, yeah, if the creditor refuses renegotiation. They sounded like people discussing weather, not someone's life imploding. Brooke finally looked at me. You're really doing this, she said. Right now, in front of everyone. I didn't raise my voice. You leveraged the house while Mom was dying, I said. You sold her ring in secret. You lied to Dad. You laughed at me in this room. This is the result. Her eyes filled, but not with remorse, with rage and desperation. You think you're better than me because you wore a uniform, she shouted. You think money makes you righteous, now I didn't move. I think choices have consequences, I said. The officer checked his watch. Time starts now, he said. The crowd began to disperse like smoke. People gathered coats, purses, jackets, murmuring polite excuses as they slipped past the officers. No one wanted to be present when a social illusion fully collapsed. In less than 5 minutes, the house emptied of strangers. Only family remained, and law, and paperwork. Brooke turned in a slow circle, looking at the furniture, the walls, the chandelier, the staircase she had descended like a queen an hour ago. You can't do this, she whispered again. This is my life. Tyler pulled her arm gently. We need to pack, he said. We can stay at my brother's. Brooke didn't move. I built this, she said. I earned this. I walked to the coffee table and picked up one of the framed photographs. Brooke and Tyler on a beach smiling, expensive sunglasses, arms around each other. I held it out. You built an image, I said, not a foundation. She snatched the frame from my hand and clutched it to her chest. Then she dropped to her knees. Right there on the marble floor. Not gracefully, not dramatically, just collapsing like someone whose knees gave out. She grabbed my leg. Margot, she begged. Please, please don't do this. We can fix it. I'll get the ring back. I'll talk to Dad. I'll make it right. Just stop this. Her nails dug into my jeans. Tyler stood frozen, torn between pulling her away and pretending this wasn't happening. Dad stood by the hallway, eyes wet, mouth tight, saying nothing because there were no words that would fix anything. I looked down at Brooke, my sister, the child who used to braid my hair before school, the teenager who borrowed my jacket and never returned it, the adult who sold our mother's ring and signed away our family home. I gently stepped back, freeing my leg. You already chose, I said. This is just the paperwork catching up. She grabbed again. You're heartless, she sobbed. You're cold, you don't understand love. I crouched slightly so we were eye level. I understand loyalty, I said. And you broke it. The officer cleared his throat. Ms. Brooks, he said, you have 20 minutes remaining. Brooks' sobs turned sharp. I'll sue you, she screamed at me. I'll destroy you. You think this is over? Arthur answered before I did. You are welcome to pursue legal action, he said calmly. However, fraud evidence, recorded admissions, and misuse of power of attorney are already documented. I would advise caution. Tyler's face drained of color. You recorded everything he asked. I nodded once. Brooke's voice cracked again, this time smaller. You planned this from the start, she whispered. No, I said. I reacted to what I found. She looked around for someone to save her. Dad wouldn't. Tyler couldn't. The officers wouldn't. Arthur didn't care. And I had already decided. Brooke pushed herself up, wiping her tears with the back of her hand, smearing mascara across her cheek. Fine, she said. If you want me out, I'll go. But don't think this makes you the hero. You're just as cruel as I am. I straightened. I'm not the hero, I said. I'm the creditor. That landed like a door closing. Tyler started upstairs to pack. Brooke followed, stumbling once on the staircase but catching herself. She didn't look back. Dad approached me slowly. Margot, he said. Voice low, did I sign those papers? I looked at him. Yes, I said. But you weren't told the truth. He nodded once, absorbing it. I should have asked more questions, he said. You trusted your daughter, I replied. That wasn't your mistake. He exhaled like a man finally putting down a burden he'd carried without knowing it. Upstairs drawers opened and closed. Hangers rattled. Suitcases rolled. The officers stood quietly near the door, not rushing, not comforting. Just witnesses of a legal process that felt more personal than any war zone I'd ever been in. 10 minutes later, Brooke came down carrying a large designer bag. Tyler followed with 2 suitcases. She walked past me without speaking, past Arthur, past Dad. To the front door. She stopped on the threshold, turned, looked at the living room, the chandelier, the staircase, the framed photos she didn't take. Then she looked at me. I hope you're happy, she said. I didn't answer. Not because I had nothing to say. Because nothing I could say would change anything now. The officer opened the door wider. Cold night air filled the house. Brooke stepped out first. Tyler followed. Suitcases bumping down the front steps. Plastic wheels scraping stone. On the driveway under the porch light, Brooke stood with her bags. Her dress wrinkled, her hair undone, her perfect image dissolving in real time. Dad watched from the doorway. I stood beside him, Arthur behind us, officers at the side. Brooke hugged herself, shivering, not from cold, but from reality finally arriving. She looked up at the house one last time. Then the officer closed the door, and the lock clicked. I stood in the entryway after the lock clicked, listening to the quiet settle over the house, because once the noise stops, reality becomes impossible to ignore. Arthur spoke first. "Everything is complete," he said. "Officers will file confirmation. Security will remain outside for the next hour. Call me if you need anything else." I nodded. He didn't ask if I was okay. People who've seen real conflict know that question is usually useless in the moment. Arthur left. The officers followed. Their footsteps faded. Their cars pulled away. Engines disappeared into the night. Then it was just me and Dad, in a house that had been full of voices, perfume, and pretending only an hour earlier. Dad rubbed his hands together. "Is it really over?" he asked. I looked at him. "The legal part," I said. "Yes." He exhaled slowly. We walked into the living room. Chairs were slightly out of place. Empty glasses sat on tables. A forgotten scarf lay across the back of a couch. A balloon from the anniversary party sagged toward the floor. Dad looked around. "This used to feel like home," he said. "It still can," I replied, "but not the way it was before." He nodded, accepting that without argument. I walked to the study and opened the desk drawer. The manila envelope with the power of attorney and mortgage documents sat exactly where I'd left it. I took it out, walked to the kitchen, and fed every page into the shredder. One sheet at a time, no ceremony, just removal. When the last piece fell into the bin, I turned off the machine. Dad watched. "Thank you," he said, "for what I asked, for not letting her take everything," he replied. I didn't answer. Gratitude was heavy. I didn't want him carrying more weight. Upstairs, I opened the door to Mom's old bedroom. The room had been turned into a guest suite. New curtains, new bedding, a vase of artificial flowers on the dresser. But in the corner stood Mom's old wooden jewelry box. I opened it, empty compartments, cleaned out. I took the velvet pouch Gus had given me and placed it inside. Then I took the small ring box and set it in the center. Not a replacement, a placeholder, a promise. I closed the lid. The next morning, I drove across town again. Gus greeted me with a tired smile. "I was hoping you'd come back," he said. I placed an envelope on the counter. "Full market value," I said. "Plus a little extra for your trouble." He opened it, glanced, then looked up sharply. "You didn't have to." "I want the ring back," I said. "However long it takes, however many hands it passes through. When it surfaces, you buy it. No questions, no negotiation." Gus nodded slowly. "I'll do it," he said. I turned to leave. "Your mother would have liked the woman you've become," he said. I paused. "I didn't do this to honor her," I said. "I did it because no one should get away with stealing from the dead." He smiled slightly. "Sounds like her anyway." Back at the house, Dad sat at the kitchen table reading the newspaper. He looked up when I entered. "Are you staying?" he asked. I thought about the empty rooms, the mortgage now under my firm's control, the house that legally belonged to no one until I decided what came next. "Yes," I said, "but not like before." We sat down together. "You'll live here," I said. "So will I. But the house goes into a trust. No loans, no collateral, no signatures without both of us present, no exceptions." Dad nodded without hesitation. "I don't want to make decisions alone anymore," he said. "Good," I replied, "because I don't want to fix someone else's decisions again." He smiled, tired, real. That afternoon we cleaned. We moved chairs back where they belonged. We threw away the decorations. We opened windows. We let sunlight replace performance. Late in the day, I walked to the front window. Across the street on the sidewalk, Brooke stood beside her suitcases. Tyler argued on his phone. Brooke wasn't crying now. She was staring at the house, her old stage, her former kingdom. She saw me in the window. For a moment, we just looked at each other through the glass. No words, no gestures. Then Tyler grabbed one suitcase. A car arrived. They loaded the bags. Brooke climbed in. The car drove away. The street returned to quiet. I turned from the window and walked back to the living room. Dad was sitting in Mom's old chair sipping tea. No porcelain set, just a plain mug. I sat across from him. "We'll rebuild," I said. "Not the way it was, the way it should have been." Dad nodded, and for the first time since I'd come home, the house felt honest. Not happy, not perfect, just real. "Before you go, I want to ask you something. If you discovered that someone in your family had betrayed your trust for money and status, would you confront them the way I did? Or would you walk away to keep the peace? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories where justice doesn't wait for permission. I used to think loud families were messy. Arguments at dinner tables, doors slamming, people storming out and coming back. It looked chaotic from the outside. But after everything I've lived through, I learned something simple. The most dangerous families aren't loud, they're quiet. They're the ones where nobody asks questions. Nobody challenges decisions. Nobody wants to be the difficult one. Everyone smiles. Everyone says it's fine. Everyone pretends tomorrow will fix what today refuses to face. Silence feels peaceful, until it isn't. In my family, silence gave my sister room to rewrite reality. Silence let paperwork replace trust. Silence let signatures happen without understanding. Silence let a house quietly become collateral. Silence let a mother's ring vanish without a funeral for the truth. No explosions, no warnings, just slow decay behind closed doors. And the uncomfortable truth is this silence isn't neutral. Silence always sides with whoever is willing to abuse it. I didn't understand that when I was younger. I thought leaving home meant I was avoiding drama. I thought staying out of family business meant I was being respectful. I thought they'll handle it was maturity. It wasn't maturity. It was absence. And absence creates vacancies. Vacancies get filled by the person most willing to take control, whether they deserve it or not. Here's the lesson I learned the hard way. If you don't ask questions, someone else gets to write your reality. That isn't just about family betrayal, it's about everyday life. People sign contracts they don't read because it feels awkward to slow things down. People hand over passwords because we trust each other. People co-sign loans because it's family. People ignore bank statements because I'm sure it's fine. And most of the time, nothing dramatic happens. Which is exactly why the habit forms. Silence feels safe until the day it costs you everything. When I opened that red folder in my sister's study, I wasn't just discovering financial fraud. I was discovering years of unquestioned decisions. Documents signed without reading, trust given without verification, authority handed over without oversight. Not because my parents were foolish, because they wanted peace. And peace without clarity is just a delay button on disaster. So let me give you something practical. Not motivational quotes, not dramatic speeches, real-world habits that protect real people. Know who owns your assets, not who handles them, not who takes care of that stuff, who legally owns them. On paper, read what you sign, not skim, not trust the summary. Read every page. If someone pressures you to sign quickly, that's not efficiency. That's a red flag. Ask uncomfortable questions early, not after the damage is done, not after relationships collapse. Early. And if someone gets defensive when you ask basic questions about money, property, or authority, that's information, valuable information. Another lesson I learned is emotional, not financial. People stay silent because they don't want to be the villain in the story. They don't want to look suspicious. They don't want to look controlling. They don't want to look dramatic. So they swallow doubts. They silence instincts. They ignore that quiet voice saying something's off. Here's the thing. If asking honest questions makes you the villain in someone's story, you were never the hero in their life. You were just useful. Silence also protects patterns. Dysfunction loves quiet rooms. Manipulation loves people who say I don't want to get involved. Exploitation loves relatives who think it's none of my business. Sometimes love requires noise. Not screaming, not violence, just truth spoken out loud. There's another side to this lesson that's harder to admit. Silence doesn't only enable the person doing harm. Silence also allows regret to grow later. My father sat in that house for months not knowing it was slipping away from under his feet. Not because he was weak, but because he trusted. Because he didn't want conflict. Because he thought love meant not questioning his own child. After everything happened, he told me something simple: I should have asked more questions. That sentence hurt more than any argument. So here's the uncomfortable but necessary advice I offer you straight, no sugarcoating. If something in your family feels off, don't wait for proof. Start with questions. If someone says, don't worry about it, worry about it. If someone says, you don't need to know, you absolutely need to know. If someone says, just trust me, verify. Trust is not blind obedience. Trust is transparency. Silence can feel kind, it can feel polite, it can feel loving, but unchecked silence is expensive, emotionally, financially, spiritually. I didn't break my family by speaking up. The silence broke it first. I just refused to keep pretending. And maybe the most important thing I learned is this: you don't have to scream to speak truth. You just have to stop whispering. So I'll leave you with a question worth sitting with. If silence in your own life is protecting someone else's comfort at the cost of your safety, your future, or your dignity, how long are you willing to stay quiet? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe if you want more stories. Where truth is louder than tradition. For a while after everything happened, people didn't ask me how I was doing. They asked one question instead. How could you do that to your own sister? Did she really sell your mother's ring? Not did she really put the house in debt? Not did she lie to your father? Just one accusation dressed as concern. How could I? And that's when I learned another truth most families never talk about. People will forgive betrayal faster than they forgive boundaries. Because boundaries make others uncomfortable. They force people to pick sides. They expose patterns everyone quietly agreed not to name. And in many families, the person who finally says no is treated as more dangerous than the person who caused the harm. I was called cold, ruthless, heartless. But here's the reality. Boundaries aren't cruel. Boundaries are clarity, and clarity is what dysfunctional systems fear most. Growing up, I was taught the same message most of you probably heard. Family sticks together. Blood is thicker than water. You forgive because they're family. On the surface, that sounds noble, loyal, loving, but no one tells you the other side of that message, that those words are often used to excuse manipulation, to justify exploitation, to silence victims, to protect the person causing damage. In real life, but where family is sometimes just a nicer way of saying, let me keep hurting you without consequences. I didn't understand that until I watched my sister weaponize family loyalty like a shield. She knew Dad wouldn't question her. She knew Mom wouldn't doubt her. She knew I was gone and wouldn't interfere. And she knew that even if the truth came out, people would hesitate to act because you don't turn on family. That belief is exactly what allowed everything to happen. So let's get something straight. Setting boundaries with family isn't betrayal. It's self-respect. It's saying I love you, but I will not let you harm me. It's saying you don't get unlimited access to my life just because we share DNA. It's saying love without accountability isn't love. It's permission. When I refused to back down, I wasn't choosing money over family. I was choosing integrity over illusion. Here's another hard truth. People who benefit from your lack of boundaries will always call your boundaries cruel. If you've ever been guilt-tripped for saying no to lending money, been pressured to sign something you didn't understand, been told you're selfish for protecting your peace, been called dramatic for asking basic questions, then you already know what I'm talking about. Boundaries feel aggressive only to people who expected you to be passive. So let's talk practical. Because boundaries aren't just emotional, they're behavioral, financial, legal. Here are real-world boundaries that save people from real-world disasters. Never sign documents you didn't read. Even if the person is your spouse, even if the person is your parent, even if the person cries. Never co-sign a loan you cannot afford to pay yourself. Because love doesn't pay interest, you do. Never hand over full financial control to someone without oversight. Trust without transparency is a gamble. Never let "I'll explain later" replace explanation. Later usually means never. And emotionally, never tolerate disrespect, because that's just how they are. Never accept manipulation because they've had a hard life. Never confuse guilt with love. When I told my sister no, I wasn't destroying the family. I was drawing a line that should have existed years earlier. And yes, it hurt. Boundaries always hurt at first, because they force change. And change feels like loss to people who benefited from the old system. But here's what happens after the pain settles. Peace returns, clarity returns, self-respect returns. My father sleeps better now, not because everything is perfect, but because he no longer wonders what hidden surprise might collapse his life next. That's what boundaries do. They replace anxiety with structure, chaos with order, fear with predictability. And there's one more thing I want you to hear clearly. Boundaries don't destroy love. They reveal whether love was real in the first place. Because genuine love respects limits. Manipulative love punishes them. So if someone in your life gets angry when you set a reasonable boundary, they're telling you exactly why that boundary was needed. You don't need to scream. You don't need to justify. You don't need to apologize for protecting yourself. You just need to stand still and let the line hold. I was called cruel for refusing to enable harm, but cruelty is taking a mother's ring from her dying hand. Cruelty is risking a father's home for personal luxury. Cruelty is lying while smiling at a tea table. A boundary is simply the moment someone says, "That stops here." And sometimes that someone has to be you. So let me ask you something worth reflecting on. In your own life, is there a boundary you've been avoiding because you're afraid of being seen as the villain, even though staying silent is quietly costing you everything? If that question hits home, share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more stories. Where strength isn't loud, but it is unmovable. People love to say, "Trust the system." They say it like the system is a wise old guardian watching over everyone equally. Like justice naturally rises to the surface if you just wait long enough. Like truth has its own gravity. I used to believe that too. I thought if something was wrong, someone would notice. If something was illegal, someone would stop it. If someone crossed a line, consequences would automatically appear. But here's what I learned in the most personal way possible. Justice doesn't arrive on its own. Justice is something you build, brick by brick, decision by decision, action by action. If I had waited for justice, my mother's ring would still be gone. My father would still be living in a house he no longer owned. And my sister would still be hosting tea parties on top of a financial landmine. Nothing would have fixed itself. The system didn't call me. The bank didn't warn my father. No authority showed up at the door to say, "Hey, something looks wrong here." Because systems don't protect people by default. They respond when someone pushes them to. That's the part no one teaches you in school. No one explains that adulthood isn't just paying bills and filing taxes. It's understanding that responsibility is the only real power you ever get. When I took control of the situation, I wasn't being heroic. I was being realistic. I understood something most people avoid. If you don't defend your own life, someone else will define it for you. And not always kindly. Justice isn't a gift. It's a construction project. You learn the rules. You gather the tools. You call the experts when needed. You act instead of waiting. And most importantly, you accept that doing the right thing often looks uncomfortable from the outside. People told me I went too far, that I should have forgiven, that I should have kept peace, that I should have handled it quietly. But peace built on denial isn't peace. It's postponement. Real justice doesn't care if it ruins a dinner party. It cares if the truth stands when the lights turn off. Here's the life lesson I want to leave you with. Waiting for someone else to fix your problem is the most expensive decision you'll ever make. Financially, emotionally, legally, spiritually. No one will care about your future more than you do. No one will guard your boundaries better than you do. No one will protect your dignity if you hand it away willingly. That doesn't mean you should live suspicious of everyone. It means you stay aware. You stay informed. You stay involved in your own life. Learn basic financial literacy. Know how loans work. Know how ownership works. Know what power of attorney means. Know what you're signing. You don't need to be an expert. You just need to know enough to recognize when something feels wrong. And if it feels wrong, pause. Ask. Verify. Because blind trust is not loyalty. Blind trust is surrender. Another truth I discovered: revenge feels loud. Justice feels quiet. Revenge is about hurting someone back. Justice is about restoring balance. I didn't do what I did to punish my sister. I did it to correct a system that had tilted too far in one direction. When everything settled, there was no cheering crowd, no victory music, no celebration, just a house that was finally honest, a father who could sleep without fear, a memory of a mother no longer being exploited. That's what real justice looks like. Not dramatic, not glamorous, just right. And here's something else important. You don't have to destroy people to stand up for yourself. You just have to stop allowing harm. Sometimes that means walking away. Sometimes that means legal action. Sometimes that means saying no for the first time in your life. Every situation is different, but the principle is the same. You are not powerless unless you choose to be. I once thought strength came from surviving difficult environments. Now I know real strength is refusing to live in environments that break you. I once thought loyalty meant staying quiet. Now I know loyalty to yourself is the foundation of every healthy relationship you'll ever have. I once thought justice was something outside of me. Now I know justice begins the moment you decide your life is worth protecting. So as this story ends, I'll leave you with one final question to carry into your own life. If you knew, without a doubt, that staying silent would cost you everything you've worked for, would you still wait for justice to come to you, or would you build it with your own hands? Share your answer in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories where courage doesn't ask for permission.
Final note. This story is a work of fiction created by artificial intelligence to heighten drama and emotion. But the valuable lessons we discuss are entirely real and continue to happen to many people every day. If this style isn't for you, that's perfectly okay. Please feel free to look for other content that better suits your needs.